Where does Colby Covington go from here? That's one of the big questions coming out of UFC 296. My name is James Lynch. In today's video, we're going to talk about what I think could be next for Colby Covington and what the UFC is going to do with him going forward, because this was a missed opportunity for Covington in a fight that was uneventful. Even MMA Junkie put that in their title. It was just not a good main event and not the type of fight you want to end the calendar year on for the UFC. It was just a bad look overall and kind of left a sour taste in people's mouths because this was not something we were expecting. And I think first we got to decide, where exactly is Colby Covington in his career right now? He's 35 years old. He got a title shot that to a lot of people felt was not deserved. Colby was given a bit of a lifeline here getting to fight for the title, and he couldn't have made it look worse. And I say that because, at least if Colby got knocked out early or he got caught, or if it was like a close fight where maybe it didn't go his way, you could use those as excuses, but there's just no real excuse other than maybe a bit of cage rust for him not performing the way he did. It was just a bizarre performance and not something we're used to with Colby Covington. In fact, Colby gets called boring a lot, but I think that was kind of unfairly said in a lot of ways. I don't really find him a boring fighter. I think this fight was definitely not the type of fight that fans want to see, and I think even the biggest Colby supporters kind of agree with that as well. So let's talk about where Colby is right now. Like I mentioned, 35 years old. He's had a couple title opportunities, so we can eliminate Colby Covington as a title contender at this point. I think that's fair. Even everything that Colby's done, I still don't see any path to him coming back and getting a title shot. So you kind of have to understand, for the UFC right now, it's like, what can they get out of him? And you got to imagine the UFC can't be happy. This is the last main event, last fight of the year that they've had, last pay-per-view, last event. And you end it like this, that cannot feel good. And we got, a lot of time off until the next event. So people are going to have lots of time to think about this fight, think about this card, and that includes the UFC as well. He got a bit of a lifeline with this title shot, right? A lot of people felt like Bilal Muhammad should have got the title shot. The UFC went with Colby, and in some ways he didn't live up to his end of the bargain here. Like I said, not a good fight. A lot of the critics towards Colby Covington, people calling him boring and all that, they now have so much ammunition because this was a boring fight. It was not very good. And now, and the other side of this as well is that the UFC now basically has to do Bilal Muhammad and Leon Edwards, a fight that it seemed like they were reluctant to do to begin with because they gave Colby the title shot over Bilal anyways. So that's another reason why you got to imagine the UFC isn't that happy. And Covington does not have a lot of leverage here, right? Like, where does he go? He can't really call the shots. The UFC's been more than generous to him in terms of title opportunities and who he's fought in the past. So you got to consider all that right now, that Colby's probably at one of the lowest points in his career right now in terms of what he's able to do and who he's able to fight next. So I wanted to put that context out there right away. But let's talk about what Colby wants. Colby has said basically that he would like to fight Stephen Thompson. Now, they both fought on the card, Thompson getting submitted by Shavkat Rakhmonov. That fight kind of makes sense. I think that a lot of people don't want to see this fight. They want to see Colby actually fight like a good fight. Like, these are two older fighters that don't really do anything for the division. And I think there's a chance this fight doesn't happen for a couple of reasons. One, I just mentioned it there. The UFC can't be too happy with Colby Covington for the performance he put on. UFC's not that happy with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think you could make the argument as well that they gave Stephen Thompson Shavkat Rakhmonov as almost a punishment for not fighting Michel Pereira because Pereira missed weight. So, do they want to deal with two guys that they're not exactly too fond of? I don't know. That doesn't really make too sense. And fighters as well that have been kind of selective in who they're going to fight, especially Thompson. Thompson's flat out said, I want to fight certain opponents. So I think that would be a reason for the UFC not to do this fight, not to mention the fact this fight does absolutely nothing for the division. It's just two ranked opponents fighting each other, but two opponents that will not be fighting for a title at any point again. So that's one thing to kind of consider, that this fight might not happen. I guess one of their saving graces is the fact that these two are free, right? The division, if you look at it right now in terms of who's available in the division right now, there's not a lot of options. I've heard some people mention Kamaru Usman, but I doubt the UFC wants to do another fight with Usman and Colby because Colby lost the first two fights, right? So I don't see that as much of an option here for Colby, but we'll go through some of the options here in a little bit. One kind of wild card option I thought of that I think could make some sense here, and hear me out for a bit because I already see people getting upset about what I'm about to say here, but why not do Colby Covington and Conor McGregor? Honestly, Conor McGregor was supposed to fight Michael Chandler. We've been hearing rumblings for a while that, that fight's not going to end up happening. It seemed like that was going to make sense. I mean, you're not going to get two bigger trash talkers fighting each other in a fight that, and Conor's in this spot right now too, where he's lost a few fights. He's not in a title position. Now, granted, Conor's sort of the exception to the rule here, but if you look at it there, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. strike while the iron's hot here. You know what I mean? And you know, I know obviously I just mentioned their Covington stock's really low, but that's a fight that for the casual fan, that's a casual fan's dream right now is Colby Covington and Conor McGregor. Take advantage of this. The trash talk with this would be incredible. Conor's also fallen off a little bit from his lack of fighting, from his losses, from some of the stuff going on outside the cage. This could be like a perfect disaster put together for the UFC, and you know, needing a big fight for UFC 300, this could make a lot of sense. And not only that, but Conor doesn't have to cut down to 155. He can fight at 170. To me, that's kind of like a fun super fight, like the type of fight that Dana was talking about that he wants to put together at UFC 300. And in my opinion, this would be the way that you get as much value as you can out of Colby Covington going forward. Because right now, like I said, Colby's brand, his stock has taken a huge hit after this performance, and the fact that he was out for so long and everything else. There's a lot of reasons to think that you know, the UFC might just want to get what they can, kind of what they've done with Tony Ferguson, right? Tony Ferguson on a huge losing streak. The UFC decided, okay, we're going to get one last thing out of Tony Ferguson here. We're going to get him to fight Paddy Pimblett, a guy who's not done too well in the UFC, but we'll use Tony as a way to build up Paddy. I could kind of see the same thing here where it's like, we're going to use Colby to get something that we can. Well, maybe that something is making Conor McGregor, you know, give McGregor a fight that maybe he can win, or a fight that, you know, would draw large numbers here. So that's kind of a wild card option, is doing Conor versus Colby. I wouldn't put it out of the equation completely. I don't think it happens, but that is a possibility that could happen, is Conor McGregor, Colby Covington. You know, again, McGregor's not a contender right now. He hasn't made a decision on if he's going to 55 or 170. This fight could make a lot of sense with the trash talk and everything like that. And again, Conor doesn't have a lot of momentum or steam right now either, just with the fact that he's been out for so long. So that's another option, is McGregor and Covington. Another option that you can do is the UFC does not like Colby Covington option. And that's, and you know, kind of what they did to Wonder Boy. There's two fights for Colby that they could do that I don't think would be very favorable towards him. The first one is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now look, I'm going to do a video on this later. I think Shavkat's done more than enough to earn a title shot, but rankings wise, it makes sense. Shavkat is free. If you look at the rankings right now, Shavkat's number 5. Colby is number 3. It makes a lot of sense. I don't think Colby will ever fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. I just don't think that's a fight that, but saying that, he's not going to have a lot of leverage right now, right? Like, he can't really do what he's done before, which is like kind of fight the older fighters. Shavkat's an absolute killer, and we saw the UFC give Shavkat Steve Wonderboy Thompson. Who's to say they will not give Colby Covington Shavkat Rakhmonov as well too? So if they wanted to, and again, this would be more of putting Shavkat over. Shavkat might be able to finish Colby. In fact, I think there's a good chance he could. And then you know, obviously build Shavkat up into his title fight off a highlight reel win over Colby Covington. That's how they could sell it. So that's one they could do as well, is Shavkat Rakhmonov and Colby Covington. The other option, again, if we're going on along this line of thinking of like building someone else up, to me, would be Sean Brady. Sean Brady's 16-1. He's a fighter that they're building up in the division. Sean Brady currently ranked number, what is he here? Number 7. It would be a bit of a jump up here. But if the UFC, again, wants to get whatever they can out of Colby Covington, because again, you know, he's not going to fight for a title. So it's like, what can we get out of Colby? Use Colby as a way to build up other fighters. That would be perfect for Sean Brady. 2 wrestlers going at it. Brady looked really good in his last fight against Kelvin Gastelum. He had the one stumble against Bilal Muhammad, the fight previously. This could make a lot of sense too. Brady doesn't talk a lot of trash, but the only reason to do this fight is to build up Sean Brady and create a new star in the division. So that's a way that you could build this up as well, as doing Sean Brady and Colby Covington. And I think for the fans, these are the two fights that we want to see, right? If you're talking about hardcore fans, we're talking about fans that are just enjoying the sport and want to see good high level fights. Brady and Shavkat, to me, are the two fights you'd want to see. Now, I'd go more with Brady because I think Shavkat's earned the title shot. Brady and Colby Covington makes a lot of sense. I would way rather see Sean Brady and Colby than see Colby fight Stephen Thompson, because Thompson, you know, is not doesn't really do anything for Colby in the division. And it kind of goes along this line of Colby fighting older fighters that have more name value, so to speak. So again, I'll just recap here. If the UFC really does not like Colby Covington and they're kind of like, hey, we're done with this guy, don't be surprised if Shavkat or Sean Brady could potentially be an opponent for Colby going forward. And that's what makes things interesting. Now, let's go with what I think is actually going to happen here. I think they're going to book the Wonder Boy fight. And the reason I think that is because Dana White didn't seem too upset with Colby with that performance. I was expecting a bit more, and I know him and Colby, they obviously have a good relationship. Obviously, they gave Colby the title shot, but listen to Dana White post-fight here. He doesn't sound that upset about the fight the way he was against, you know, with Francis and Derek Lewis, or with Adesanya and Romero. Granted, that was both sides really not doing much in those fights in both of those instances. But listen to Dana White here. He does not sound like a guy who's super upset about the main event. Listen to him here.
Well, I guess my take on it is, and you guys can let me know what you think, but when you're 35 years old and or any age in this sport, you're like, yeah, I'm going to wait. waiting is never a good idea in this sport.
So he's a little bit upset with him here for waiting out, right?
And
but listen.
I think he looked slow tonight. He got out wrestled.
Look at his facial expression here, not there, but if you go back a little bit here. Like, he doesn't look upset. He doesn't look angry. To me, if the UFC really hated Colby, Dana would come on there and be like, what an embarrassment, all that. You didn't hear any of that from Dana, which I thought was a bit surprising, right? Because he could have gone that route easily with how this fight played out. Again, last pay-per-view of the year, last fight of the year, and it was not good. And I'm not the only one. A lot of fighters, I forgot to mention this too, Michael Chandler, Ben Askren, Henry Cejudo, a lot of people upset with that performance from Colby Covington. So I'm not alone here. Again, well, I don't think I am anyways, but still, I mean, even a lot of fighters are saying that. And then you listen to Dana White here talk about the Colby Covington trash talk or whatever. He says, watch what Dana says here. He says he doesn't like it when fighters talk trash or talk trash about people's families, but also he's not talking about suspending him or anything else. Listen to Dana here.
Absolutely. Yeah. It bothered everybody, I think. Listen. What I say is true. We're in the fight games. Lots of mean things are said, and one of the things that I really don't like is family. When you start going after family and whether it's the kids, the wife, the parents, the whatever, it's just such a nasty thing to do. But again, this is one of those sports where you say horrible things, and then 24 hours later, it goes down,
Because he knows it's good for business. At the end of the day, that's all they care about is business, right? So Colby can say whatever he wants. It got more people interested in the fight. It got more people hating Colby. But, again, Dana's just sitting there going dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs. So that's what makes me think they are going to end up doing Colby and Stephen Thompson. Again, for, this would be a perfect fight for UFC 300, actually, because for casual fans, this is perfect. Everyone knows Colby. Most people know Stephen Thompson. He fought for a title. They know he's been around for a while. Nice guy versus bad guy. Colby's even more hated now because of the stuff with Leon. You got, Wonder Boy, who's sort of this, fan favorite, right? I mean, I guess some fans aren't happy with him because of the Pereira fight, but I think they're going to end up doing this fight. And that's a bummer because really, I think when it comes down to it, fans do not want to see Colby fight another veteran. They want to see him fight an up and comer, like I said. And it's just, but it's not up to us. It's about what the overall audience wants. And, as far as like appealing fights, there's going to be more casual fans into Wonder Boy and Colby Covington than there are with Sean Brady or Shavkat or any of those other fights. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think the UFC is going to kind of play ball with Colby a little bit, give him his fights, but I think they'll give him Wonder Boy, and then after this, I think they're going to start giving Colby, even if he wins, they're going to start giving him up and comers, and maybe Colby refuses, and then maybe that's the end of him in the UFC. But I just think from here on out, it's going to get really interesting with Colby Covington because I really don't know what they're going to do with him. Like, I think they will try and get as much as they can out of Colby before he decides to retire or hangs them up, but I think for now, things are going to get very interesting, but I do think he will end up fighting Wonder Boy. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. A couple things. Number one, what fight do you want to see for Colby Covington next? Let me know in the comments on that. What fight do you think the UFC is actually going to do, though? That's different, right? So what do you think will happen there? And number three, where do you think Colby Covington's career is headed? Like I said, I think the UFC is going to try and get as much as they can out of Colby going forward, just to build up other guys. And then once they are, kind of have used that rope as long as they can, then they'll either cut him or get rid of him or whatever. I don't know. But I think the days of Colby Covington as a title challenger are completely done at this point. And I think Saturday's performance was sort of the nail in the coffin. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. Any other topics you want me to talk about in these videos, let me know in the comments. Always good to hear from you guys. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.